In June of 2024, journalism student Hannah Harris drove to a remote Missouri cabin to interview an elderly hunter about local folklore. She expected tall tales and childhood memories. What she recorded instead was a 65-year-old confession that would haunt her long after she left that cabin. A confession about the shot that changed everything, and that creature that refused to die. As a fifth-generation Missourian, Hannah had been in many cabins that looked like this one, yet there was an eeriness to the air that she could not explain, and a chill far too cold to match the summer weather. Before Corbin Andrews began to tell the harrowing story he had kept buried for over 6 decades, Hannah counted 7 stuffed elk and bear hide hanging on the wall, and without warning, a black bear hide as dark as the night fell to the ground with a thud, causing Hannah to jump from her log seat. On seeing Corbin fail to as much as flinch at this, her curiosity piqued, and with that, Corbin began to speak his harrowing truth. A lot of people don't know the Osage Indians aren't really Osage at all. Osage is a French word, not an Indian word. It means calm water. They finished with the Bagnell Dam in 1931, and there was already an Osage River then. I don't know why they called it the Osage River, if Osage means calm water. That river is anything but calm. In any case, I was born in 1948, 17 years after the dam was complete. My dad and my Uncle Jason lived in Lynn Creek, but the home where they grew up is under the lake now. They told me they had to drag Grandpa out of the house. He wasn't going to leave his home no matter what some rich folks from Massachusetts thought about it. I used to love stories about Grandpa. He died when I was 9 in 1957, and when Dad and Uncle Jason took me hunting in November 1959, I wanted to get a deer in Grandpa's memory. And since I was young and foolish, it was my first time hunting. I thought I could also get some quail for him and some pheasant too because the seasons overlapped. That November was my first ever hunting trip, and I had 5 days to shoot a deer. We all sat in this cabin on November 16th, the day before deer season opened. Well, it wasn't this cabin exactly. The fire back in '82 burned up most of the cabin, and we had to rebuild, but we're sitting in pretty much the same place. A relic of the old days. Dad and Uncle Jason made me shoot at a target for 6 weeks, and the deal was that I had to put 6 shots in a row right in the bullseye before I could actually hunt. There was something about that. See, that number, 6. It's a powerful number, 6. I remember Mama counting money out every now and again, and she always counted the money when she came back from the store, or when she paid a bill, or even when she gave me $1 or $2 to go to a corner shop. I remember the look of concentration on her face as she used to pause at 5 and hurry so she could get through 6 really quick. It was like Mama breathed again at 7, or at 27, or 37. I don't think she did that at 17. Maybe if it was called 1 and 6 instead of 16, she would have jumped past that too. But 6 mattered to Mama, and 6 mattered to Dad, and Uncle Jason. And so I had to get 6 shots right where they belonged, and only then did that make me trustworthy enough to go after a deer. See, Dad and his brother thought deer were special. They had a teacher, I think it was in junior high, and she was Osage. The Osage Indians didn't worship deer, but they were important, real important. Deer gave them meat, skin for clothes, guts for cords, and for other things too. Without bison, they'd all die, sure, but without deer, the Osage wouldn't have thrived. I guess the point is that my dad didn't want me winging a deer and leaving it alive and hurting. Not a deer. He didn't make me hit a target before I was allowed to go after squirrels, but I had to hit a target 6 times before I could point a gun at a deer. It was that simple. I shot at the target for months before I made 6 times in a row, and then I had to do it all over again because the first time I was alone right outside the cabin. I was excited, and I think what I loved most about it was that Dad and Uncle Jason treated me like an adult and not like a kid. They still knew I was a kid, but I was a kid in the middle of growing up now, a kid who wasn't just a child anymore. I was doing something men did, and that made a difference. I was still a kid, though, and I think that's probably why they didn't believe me when I saw the Howler for the first time. See, when I saw it, I said it was a catamount, but it was black and not sand-colored. We called them catamounts because my grandparents grew up in the East. Most of my friends called them cougars or mountain lions, but they all saw them in movies and not in real life because Missouri had pretty much killed them all in the state. They probably would have listened to me if those cats were still around. Its face wasn't a cougar's face, though. It was shaggy and more like a bear. Plus, it had horns on the top of its head, but like sheep horns or goat horns, not like deer or elk. There were two more, though, coming out from the sides. It was like someone took a catamount, a bear, and a Jacob sheep and squeezed them all into one. They didn't believe me, of course. What grown man is going to believe a child telling a story like that? Would you believe it? No. But Dad and Uncle Jason thought it was important for a boy to learn by making mistakes. They thought if I tracked it for them just like they taught me to track, I'd lead them to a normal animal and learn a good lesson. They let me look at the brush and see the broken leaves and the scattered twigs and the needles on the ground. They let me lead them forward, and sure enough, they taught me good, because I found the devil. It was back in the trees before they could see it, and then there was the howling. So Uncle Jason said it was a wolf. Even though Dad said it wasn't like any wolf he'd ever heard before, he still said to me that I saw a wolf and just thought it was black. I didn't, though. I didn't see a catamount either. We headed toward the howling, and we saw it in a clearing. It looked like a giant catamount, but jet black, and it had a long tail coiled up like a spring, and paws too big for its legs. When we saw it, Dad was the one who said, "Howler," before it ran into the woods again. Dad said he wanted to go after it. Uncle Jason said Ozark howlers never hurt anybody. But even I knew a howler was an omen. If you saw one, it meant something bad was gonna happen. Back then, I didn't really know the difference between a sign of something bad and the cause of something bad. If bad things happened because of howlers, then I should kill it. I guess it seemed to me a good idea. Killing the thing that always showed up to say something bad was on the horizon. Anyway, Dad said that the first hunt could make me famous, and so Uncle Jason finally agreed. So our deer hunt was suddenly a howler hunt. There wasn't a whole day of tracking behind me, or even a half a day. This all happened just an hour or so after we left the cabin. My mind wasn't getting muddled. It wasn't like those nights when I felt like I was going to just fall over right where I stood. It wasn't like how my mind would rage against my body because I wanted to be awake with Dad and Uncle Jason and not sleeping like a kid. I was wide awake when we tracked that howler, and just like I was taught, my gun was ready to go. I might only have a second to fire, and Dad wanted me to kill it. I thought he wanted me to be famous, the kid who proved the howler was real. And so I held my rifle just like I was supposed to. When the time came, I could get it right up to my shoulder, and I could fire. I practiced shots like that already. I had a Winchester 30-30, and it was my dad's gun before he gave it to me. That gun had already shot deer and elk and pigs and, I think, catamounts before they all got killed off in Missouri. And now it was going to get a howler. It might be the first gun ever to shoot one, and I was going to be the hunter that did it. I imagined the head done upright by Larson's trophy, but then I thought I wouldn't do that at all, but I'd give it to a museum, and all my classmates would see my name on a little plaque right next to it. Ozark Howler, taken November 17th, by Corbin Andrews. I imagined Reggie Ventris seeing that and turning green with envy. I guess back then I wanted Rose Ellen Bloom to see it too, but I didn't know much why, other than she was pretty, and I liked it when she smiled. But I held my rifle, and I knew when I saw that howler, I would try to do just what Dad and Uncle Jason taught me to do. A quick snap up would put the butt on my shoulder and my eyes in line with the sights. I should be able to shoot in less than a second, and that's how it worked. Snap, sight, and shoot. Only I should have known it would be different with a howler. There was nobody in Missouri, Arkansas, or Kansas who could track like Uncle Jason. No white man, anyway. There were probably Osage Indians somewhere who could, but most of them were already on the reservation in Oklahoma. There's an Indian spirit roams the mountain taking revenge for them. They deserved better than the reservation, but that's another story. The point, though, is that if there is an Osage around, he could probably track better than Uncle Jason, but nobody else would. Nobody. Snap, sight, shoot. I could already see Rose Ellen's smile. Dad walked by Uncle Jason and then a little ahead of him, and then to the side when Uncle Jason said that we were real close. Real close. I squeezed my hands and then unsqueezed them on my rifle. I knew my time was coming, and back then I wouldn't dream of saying it, but I can now. It was exciting as hell. That's what it was. Exciting as hell. I was just about to make the most important kill of my life. And actually, I was about to make the most important kill of anyone's life. My heart beat like an Osage drum, and the drum was the heart of the Osage community, so I guess that makes a lot of sense. And then, there it was. It was right there in front of me, and it howled a long, powerful howl as it stood on its hind legs and stared a vicious stare right at me. The rifle snapped. I sighted. But I paused my finger on the trigger, and for some unknown reason I started counting in my head like Mama did with her money. I was going to count to 7 and then fire, but as I counted to 6, I felt the chill come over me. My finger pressed that trigger, but I swear, my mind had nothing to do with it. I knew as I pulled that trigger that I hit. There's never been a better shot than that shot, and I lowered the rifle in happy confusion. I was famous. Maybe I'd take Rose Ellen to an ice cream social. It was done, and I won. I got the best trophy ever, and it wouldn't even be a trophy. But something was wrong. See, that howler just stood there, howling as it stared at me. It stared into my soul with its vivid red eyes. I glanced at Uncle Jason, and he lifted his gun, but before he could fire, that animal just bounded away. I saw Dad staring at where it had been. He fell to his knees, and that's when we saw it. Blood, so much blood, right there in the middle of his body, where his chest met his belly. There was a .30 caliber hole. My bullet had found its target, and my father stared at us for a second before letting out a wet sigh and falling to the ground. I fell down next to him, my childlike cries begging for him to get up. Red continued to spill out of him, staining the spot where the true color of his clothes used to be. Dad held his hand out to me. I saw the number 6 right there on his palm, outlined in the blurred red lines and creases. After he fell silent, I still begged for him to wake up. I couldn't believe the way it was, that I had missed a howler and hit my dad. I don't remember leaving my dad and passing through the trees back home. As try as I do, it never comes back to me. But I got home somehow. Uncle Jason made sure of that. Uncle Jason said I hit the thing right like I was taught, but it wasn't an animal at all, but a spirit, so the bullet went right through it. He said that's why he lied to the police. I did everything right, but the howler did the rest. He took my gun and told me that he shot at a deer, but Dad got in the way. He made me say that over and over and over when the police came, and I said it to them. Uncle Jason shot a deer, but Dad got in the way and got shot. Uncle Jason shot a deer, but Dad got in the way and got shot. Uncle Jason shot a deer, but got in the way and got shot. I've been telling that story for the last 6 decades. I told it so much that I started to believe it myself. Uncle Jason has been dead for a long while, and the way I feel, I guess I'll be dead before long too. The Osage didn't used to believe in heaven, and then the peyote churches came, and they believed it, and now they're mostly Catholic or Baptist or Quakers. Dad did, and Uncle Jason did, and maybe they're all right, and that means I'll see Dad and Uncle Jason real soon. Maybe it's more like what the Osage believed before, that death was just a long night. If that's it, I guess I'll sleep. Well, maybe now that I talked about this, I won't have to hear that howl when I close my eyes. I wouldn't count on it, though. It always seems to find a way into my head. It always seems to find a way to trouble me. At the end of the interview, Corbin Andrews revealed the palm of his hand to Hannah Harris. He had been subconsciously scratching at it as he spoke and seemed more excited than frightened to see a bloody number 6 imprinted on his flesh. Hannah left the cabin with an uneasy feeling in her gut. She researched Corbin's family and found that his dad had died in a deer shooting gone wrong back in 1959. Recorded sightings of the Ozark Howler span back to the early 1800s, when frontiersman Daniel Boone claimed to have encountered and shot a creature in Missouri like none he'd ever seen before. Corbin Andrews died 6 months after giving this interview. He was found in his cabin, where, despite being covered in bear and elk fur, it appeared he had frozen to death. Some stories follow bloodlines like shadows. If this reminded you of legends whispered in your own family, those tales that were probably just stories, you're not alone. We keep these memories alive here by the hearth. Subscribe to join our circle of storytellers, and perhaps next time you'll recognize the signs before they find you. And also, well, there's something else about the number 6 that Corbin mentioned. Something Hannah Harris discovered in her research that she never published. But I'll save that for another evening by the fire. Until then, keep your family stories close and listen when the old ones try to warn you. And for more scary horror stories, please share and subscribe.